ALP groups covering all sorts of subjects. Currently we've got ALP groups on football, the glory and dismay, on women's studies, a couple, the damn rebel bitches.
DRB.
The DRB, it's DRB, it's a much preferred we've got groups involving the Spanish diaspora. We have groups covering everything, covering all kinds of politics. Tonight we've got the democracy group, a lot of them here today. Welcome. Has Derek stayed now, or is he now that he's had his bit of food, has he run away?
He's on the wagon.
He's on the wagon, is he? Alright, okay. And basically, in the last 35 years, a lot has changed. 35 years ago, I think I'm right in saying, Thatcher was in power. 79 was Thatcher here?
She came in at the same time as ALP was formed.
Yes,
and we're still here.
We're still here. Well, that's very good. I was in Argentina actually when Avenida Belgrano, when her funeral was taking place. And there were some celebrations going on here, I can tell you. But over the last 35 years, we've had Thatcher, we've had Blair, we've had illegal wars, we've had huge cuts in living standards. Living standards have never been more under attack now than they ever have been. And we've got, just happening just now, Edinburgh City Council slashing the budget for adult and further education. So we know there's going to be less money in the pot in the year ahead than has been up to now. And ALP has suffered over the last 35 years quite substantially in relation to these cuts, because back in the heyday, ALP had 5 full-time workers, 3 community education workers and 2 support staff. Now, we have less than 1. Not that John is anything less than 1, but we don't even have 100% of John's time. So, and goodness knows how much time, if any of John's, will be allowed after this new round of cuts. So basically this is to launch a new thing that we call a co-investigation that's going to go out into the community, go round a group of houses. We've identified a small area, and we'll be talking much more about this in a moment, where we're going to every single household and business in this small defined area, around 300 odd I think, and trying to get feedback from the local people as to what they like about the area, what they don't like, what we can do to help. And over the last 2 or 3 months, the ALP Association and this new organisation, which is part of us, called Tollcross Together, have been doing a lot of pre-planning for this. And I just want to mention a few people up front. First of all, I want to mention some new faces that I certainly wasn't aware of, who've got hugely involved and been very, very, very important in getting to the stage we're at now. Jordy, who's over here, Sam, Carly, who was here a moment ago, there she is, Carly, Edu, and Edu, of course, is the one who has produced these fantastic tapas, which you'll be able to eat eventually. And of course, again, without some of the stalwarts of the ALP Association, particularly I would mention Norman, Anna Ruth, who unfortunately did her back in on the way here tonight and can't be here, and of course John Clare himself. Without the involvement of these people and others who I've probably forgotten to mention, we wouldn't. Orla, of course, but many others. So what we're planning to do now, you'll be pleased to hear, shut up. We're going to have Stan talking for a guaranteed maximum of 10 minutes, I promise. Guaranteed maximum of 10 minutes. About the history of ALP. Right, he's going to be talking about the history of ALP and various strands of that. We're then going to have Will coming in and talking a bit about this new co-investigation, what's happening with it, how people can help. We'll talk more about that at the end. Then Norman is going to speak briefly about this new photography competition we're going to be launching tonight. And last but not least, before the interval for food and topping up of drinks, will be Sam and possibly Jordy taking us briefly through this new website that's been created, the blog that's been created, and Anna Ruth, I know, and others had an awful lot to do with that, especially Sam and Jordy. So there's a lot of work gone into it. I don't understand anything about it at all. Something on Tinternet, right? And that's the vague out. Then once we've had some food, we'll come back together for a short period, deal with any questions that people have, and try and get people engaged, because we'll have a sign-up sheet going round for people who would want to be involved in this process in the couple of months that are ahead. So I'll thank you very much just now, and I'll pass you on to Stan, who will now take us back in time before we go forwards in time. Thanks a lot. Yay!
Thank you very much. It's a wild and wet afternoon in December 1950. There was a thunderstorm. The lights slowly went out across Hamilton. And I emerged from the womb. Shame. So I thought I would start there and just fill in the rest of the next 63 years. So pin by your ears. No. I'm delighted to see quite a lot of representatives from other Tollcross organisations in here, like the Tollcross Community Council, the Fountain Bridge, Canalside Initiative, the Grove Community Garden. There's a few other people that represent. So that's where you come in. What is a co-investigation? It's called co-investigations. Nobody liked the word when we started in 1979, and they probably don't like it now. They hate the word investigation. But it is, in fact, a piece of participant research, where the human beings that live in an area research their own area. Now, this is a radical and strange idea. Most research is done by the outsider who comes in and looks at you and goes, very strange. So, from the very start, in 1979, we said, well, let's investigate the social issues. One of the things we did is we went to see all the activists in the area before we started and let them know we were doing it. We said, but we're not going to ask you as activists. We might ask you as individuals, because you've already decided what the social issues are for you, and you're taking action. And that's absolutely good. So we're in solidarity with you, but we need to talk to people who want to look at their own reality. And what we're looking for is something called a generative theme. And I'll just go over here. I have some in this bag here. This bag is completely full of generative themes.
Stan, for the purposes of filming, can you return to that? Yes!
I will return. Okay. So, what this new crowd are going to do is they're going to go and talk to people, and they will hopefully uncover generative themes. When I started in '79, what community education used to go, they used to ask two questions. What would you like to learn? And what would you like to change in your community? And for me, that's like asking an 18-month-old baby what they would like to eat for their tea. Didn't ask them, because then they'll think of something that you can't provide. So what happens, if you ask that question, people immediately think, what already exists that, what is adult education? It's learning hard sums. Oh, I'd like to learn hard sums. So you're presenting them with a... So what, you don't ask them that question. You ask them, what are the social issues that you are facing personally in your family and with your friends? And having asked that question, you then begin, if we asked that of all the people here, say this was the community, there would be dominant ideas would start to emerge. And you, as the researcher, have a tremendous responsibility to have no agenda whatsoever yourself. You must be just simply listening to the people. What is it that they are telling you? Now, that's not out of magnanimity. That's because that's the only way to work. Because once you establish what the social issue is, you then start to develop learning programs and projects to tackle that issue. So, for instance, I'll just pick one, community building. This was in 2000, year 2000, we're talking about community building. So, out of that we ran some seminars about how you build community. So people came along to that.
Houses.
Sorry?
Build houses.
No, no. Well, that would come under our theme economy and change, or our theme of the time. Yeah, in fact, I'll come back to it. I'll pick another one. Transport and environment. So houses are very important. One of our first collaborators was what is now the Canmore Housing Association. So they were engaged in a process of physical regeneration, and our job was regeneration of a community through adult education. So you ask people what are the themes of the epoch, and I was saying to Will earlier, this lot here are, I'll just read them to you: economy and change, community building, leadership and authority, transport and environment, emerging generations, engaging minorities, and the one that was actually missing from that was anything to do with independence and autonomy, which the previous one had thrown up as enormously important. And that's because this is 5 years after we got devolution, and everybody was tired out talking about that. They weren't engaged with it. Obviously what's going to happen to you guys, that's going to be numero uno, but you'll need to get underneath that. You need to say, why? Why do you want, what is independence? What is dependence? What is independence? How is it making you feel? I've been engaged in a debate with Melanie Phillips of the Daily Mail, and she thinks we all want independence because we hate English. It's amusing to me because I obviously have to beat myself up and my wife and children. So she's not got the theme of the epoch. She hasn't grasped the sumo of it. So you get a theme, you get contradictions. That's very, very important. People will have differing views of the same theme. And how do you create a project which actually engages both of those sides? So thinking about engaging minorities in 2000. And we then, and Rona was involved in that, we took that theme and we said, who is engaged with minorities? We said the Scottish Refugee Council are doing some community work with engaging minorities. We engaged a research worker to look at work in minorities throughout Edinburgh, and then we as the Adult Learning Project decided where we would put our energy. And we decided that we would engage with the Refugee Council, and we would take our education programmes into their setting as a way of welcoming refugees and teaching them about Scotland. Because refugees were coming here, they were put in houses miles away from each other, alienated from the local population in a community they knew nothing about. So we set up a project where we learned about their social issues, what was happening in Iran and Iraq, and they learned about our social issues. It was a swap. And that was a wonderful project, it lasted for a number of years, and out of that emerged the welcoming. I don't know if it's correct, some people have been engaged here in the welcoming, and it's now its own autonomous project, and has had a remarkable effect on the development. So I'm not going to say very much more, and I'm going to keep to my time. I've got 3 minutes. Okay. So how do you know when you've got a generative theme? Now, if you want to understand more about that, you'll have to go to the Freire books. Paulo Freire, he has a whole chapter on that. It's chapter 2 of Pedagogy of the Press. It's a fine little book. Okay, but essentially, a theme is a dominant idea which holds within it contradictions. So the theme of the epoch here in Scotland is the contradiction is dependence, independence. That's the contradiction. All human beings are dependent, all human beings seek independence. They have both. So that's what a contradiction is. So the theme may be autonomy, but the contradiction is dependence and independence. How do you know when you've hit not just a theme, but a generative theme? He uses this word very particular. And it's quite simple. It's something which generates. And my example of this would be a generative word. Imagine it's 1988 and you're in a room full of the Tory party, and you stand up and you go, Greenham Common. It's like the blue touch paper and retire. So nobody knew of this tiny little village called Greenham. No one knew all about it. So it moved from just being a sleepy backwater to being a place which was the focus of tremendous debate, discussion, and sort of culture changing, culture shifting. Think of the effect it's had on women and the women's movement. Think of the effect it's had on the whole relationship with America. Well, it did for a short time. They came back, didn't they? Anyway, so that's one clue. It generates a lot of action. So, and what happens is, if you get it right, you launch an education programme or a community project, and you have to barricade the doors because people want it so much that they come here. They keep coming. So, and we can think of many examples in Alps history. One would be as part of the investigation in 1990, we launched a social history programme. At one point, we had 6 social history groups, all of whom were bursting at the seams. Everyone. What happened, I think, was we got devolution by surprise, and then people said, I don't know anything about this country. I love you, I don't know anything about it. So, Rowan will attest to this. They were just pour them in the door. We had women's history, we had this history, that history, the next thing. And is John Paul here? No, he's not. Oh, there he is! Yes. And he was a hero. And John Paul starred in a film starring the great Paulo Freire called Liberating Literacy. And when the filmmakers came, they could smell this freedom, as Paulo Freire said. And they looked to the social history group and he said, this is the group that's got the most energy in Alp at the moment. And so they interviewed him, and they interviewed John Paul talking about his involvement in that. And he was in this group called, this film called Liberating Literacy, which was projects all around Britain. And when Paulo saw this, he said, some of these projects are like me, and some of those projects are not so like me. And the history one, he says, in the adult learning project, he says, I can smell freedom, I can taste freedom. It's a great speaker. So that was fine. Okay, and really, so one more example. As you unfold and you get your themes, I'm involved with Jane in the Foundbridge Canalside Initiative, and that's a project where people who all live around here are trying to make a neighbourhood rather than more offices. So we've had absolutely no problem in recruiting 200 people as our friends. We haven't actually done any promotion at all, hardly. And another example is the Grove Garden. We launched the Grove Garden. We have one garden. The council are so impressed with it, they've given us another one. By the end of April, we'll have 200 members gardening. So that's a theme of the epoch, I think. Reconnecting with the land, making the city human, rehumanising the city, and that. So that's a way where we didn't do an investigation, we just thought it was a good idea. And as it transpired, it was a good idea. So, I'm going to hand you over to Will, and he's going to tell you now how he's going to conduct it. But the last thing I want to say is just about these photographs. Donald Dewar, R.I.P. Photographs by our photography group investigating social issues. Social issues, teenagers in the underpass, social housing, the role of fathers in parenting, and last but not least, the very second, when the referendum passed the required number of votes to push it over the 50% mark. This was about 3:15 in the morning in St. Bride's. It was the very moment when, if everybody else who voted no, you would still be getting your devolved parliament. And you'll notice some people here that were there. So, it doesn't just, it's not a dry thing. You don't just uncover social issues. You uncover social issues and then you engage people in learning and social action. What we do in Alpwitz is unique and has kept us going for 35 years is the marriage between learning and social action. And it works. I rest my case. Thank you.
Yeah, well done.